Uh, Dear students, today let us go to the next poem written by W.H. Davis. If you look at the history of poets in British literature, there are very few and rare poets who can match the kind of passion for life that Mr. W.H. Davis has got. He loves life so much. He deeply delves into the life and tries to understand the inner core of life. Mr. W. S. Davis, born on 3rd July 1871, passed away in 1940 on 26th September. Uh, he was born in Welsh of United Kingdom, and he also moved to America. And here is a poet who has keenly tried to face the hardships of life. Not only facing the hardships of life, we all pass through different hardships of life. But Mr. W.S. Davis not only has passed through the hardships of life, but at the same time he has been able to reflect upon these hardships of life. That's very important. A person who has got, should I say, deep and abiding love for life, and who is interested to return something to the society, can alone think on these lines. Remember, I have told you times without number in many of my classes that poets have an inner eye. The passion to do something, to contribute something to the society is the inner drive that makes the poet commit himself for the cause of the society. And Mr. W. S. Davis has written beautiful poems, especially on life. There is a famous line from Mr. W. S. Davis in which he says that we have no time to wait and watch. Human beings are so busy, so much indulged in their life that they have hardly any time to reflect upon, to think upon, to move upon many issues of life. Uh, Therefore, I don't want to go into the details of the biographical aspects of Mr. W. S. Davis. Now let's go to the poem. Today I am going to deal with another poem prescribed for your syllabus, that is A Happy Life by Mr. W. S. Davis. Remember, the title itself indicates the poet writes about life, no doubt. What kind of life it is? The poet is going to speak about the happy life, not the life that has marred you, not the crisis that have dampened you, not the problems that you confronted with. Here, the poet is specially interested to deal the finest part of life. Remember, one can work and work, accumulate wealth, have enough physical property, but if he is denied of the wealth of happiness, the luxury of happiness, the tremendous joy that he can get from happiness cannot be equated with material world. Material world, no doubt, can give you comforts to your body, but the happiness is something to do with the mind. Happiness is a state of mind wherein you are totally absorbed, you are completely immersed altogether in a different world. You are pursuing happiness. Happiness rather makes you to distance yourself from the mundane activities that people have indulged in just to satisfy their basic needs of life. No doubt, we all do need basic needs like roti kapda and makan. See, we all need shelter, we all need food, we all need clothing, but that's not an end in itself. From where it is expected that you must try to start your journey. Then, what is the theme of this poem? Be happy. To be happy for your life, you need to fulfill certain conditions. What's it? You cannot be happy unless you make others also happy at the same time. You can't be happy at the cost of others' tragedies. You can't be happy at the cost of others' difficulties, crises, problems. And you can't be happy if you are a slave to your ideas. You must be a master of your mind. You are not supposed to be a slave of your mind. If you happen to be a slave of the mind, obviously what happens that you start listening to your mind, and your mind might dictate its terms, and you might follow those uh, terms, and eventually it may lead to a stage wherein you will be deprived of the joy or happiness or pleasure that you aspired for. Therefore, what is the prerequisite condition that a human being must possess? If at all he wants to be happy, he should be able to be good first. If you want to be happy, be good. Not only be good, obey the God. Be loyal to God. Be faithful to God. If that is the case, what happens? You are not bound by anybody. You are free in your ideas. You are free in your thinking. If you are dictated by somebody for their own ulterior motives, then things shall not fall the way you expect them to be. Therefore, you must be free in your thinking, in your ideas, because that's how you can reach the abode of God. That's how you can be the devotee of a God, a friend of God. You can go nearer the God. If you are not following these simple principles of life, you cannot be happy. So, I have given you the key to this poem. The key to this poem is to be happy, you are required to follow certain, should I say, the the conditions as I have just now mentioned. Uh, the poet starts his poem with this beautiful remark of life. Oh, what a life is this I lead! That means, remember, he is perfectly happy. He is perfectly happy with what his life condition is, in what state of mind he is, in what kind of situation he is placed in. See, he says, "Oh, what a life is this I lead." That means, don't be under the impression that he is expressing his regret that he is not in a happy mood. No, the poet is really happy, joyous, in a very pleasant mood. He says that, "Oh, what a life is this I lead." He exclaims at his own life condition and immensely happy and rather thanking the God who knows. Far from the hum of human greed. See, there is a little complaint by the poet that I'm happy because I'm far from these human beings in a remote place because I could find that people are greedy, lecherous, selfish, always wanting to possess more and more and more. They want to have more and more. They never share. That should not be the case. The poet, see, I'm happy because I'm far from the hum of human greed. See, I'm away from this humdrum of life. People are busy earning for themselves, earning for their family members, earning for children, earning for wife, earning for kith and kin, earning for the next generation. When will this earning crave cease, stop? Endless. It's an endless one. See, far from the hum of human greed, the poet says that I don't want to live with the, the, the human beings where I am not at all comfortable to be surrounded by greedy people. Therefore, what I have done, I have come to a place to live happily where I have been able to create my own world. Hmm. Ah. In the third line of the poem, the poet comes out a brilliant description of the surroundings in which he lives, where he is placed, what are the surroundings of the poet are being described here. What kind of place he lives in? See, here he could find where crows like merchants dressed in black go leisurely to work and back. The poet says he is living in such a place. In that place, there is a world of birds. There is a world of birds. Let's say a bird like a crow. All of you know what crows are. You have seen, you have witnessed. A black bird, which is very common, sits on the terrace or in the garden. If you spread some food grains for drying up under the sunlight, a crow might come and try to pick it up. There is a famous writer called R.K. Narayan, and there is a famous cartoonist called R.K. Lakshman. R.K. Lakshman is the brother of R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan is a leading Indian writer in English. Mr. R.K. Lakshman happens to be his brother. And what he has done, he has fallen in love with the beauty of this crow. Mr. R.K. Lakshman has fallen in love with the beauty of this crow. And if you happen to visit his home, once I was witnessing it in a documentary on television, you can see the lovely photographs of these crows hung on the wall. But remember, in this part of the world, a crow is not befriended. Sparrow, of course, a sparrow very easily enters into your home. But when a crow comes, you think that it's a bad omen. Something bad is going to happen. It is not auspicious. Many elders believe that if a crow enters into your home and passes through it and gets out, exits from another door, it is said that it is going to create a greatest catastrophe at your home. That's the kind of feeling they have. But what the poet says in this context is that here the crows, they do their routine work. And remember, all the birds in this world and all the animals in the world, except human beings, are more interested in their basic needs. They search their food, eat, search the water, drink, and search a place, stay safe. But it's only human beings, but it's only human beings, they store, hoard, collect for today, for tomorrow, for next year, for next 10 years, for next 100 years, for next generation. This is a fundamental difference between the human beings and the birds. So the crows, of course, the poet is comparing the crows to merchants, assembly, like merchants dressed in black. The poet says that the color of a crow is black. If the color of the crow is black, he compares it to the merchants. Merchants are more interested in their own profits. Uh, Definitely, the crows are also interested more in fulfilling their own belly. Uh, the crows, like merchants, dressed in black, obviously, he described the color of the crow, go leisurely to work. They go to work. What is the work? Collection of food. Crows don't have any other work except collecting the food. They go very leisurely. Remember, they don't have any urgency, they don't have any time schedule, they don't need to give any attendance, they don't need to give any biometric attendance. See, there is no boss who would ask them for being late or early to reach the spot to collect the food for itself and for its children. Who knows? So they go there to work very leisurely, hmm, without any humdrum, and come back once the belly is full. These crows return home late in the evening. Remember, this is the case with all the birds, with all the animals and all birds. What do? They start their journey early in the morning and go to different parts of that geographical location and try to eat. Once their stomach is full, they return home to their nests, to their dwelling place. So the poet says that even the birds are so leisurely where he lives that he has got many lessons to learn from these birds. Where swallows leap and dive and float. Here is a place where I am living. It is so beautiful, it is so exquisite. It is not only crows, they stay here. Even swallows are also there. Another kind of bird which usually stays with its mate in the nest. Swallows, they don't live single usually. They live in couple. They live with their mates in the nest. Therefore, even swallows are leaping, hopping. See, they are so beautiful to look at, so majestic to look at when they are hopping, leaping, uh, gleaning their food, selecting the field where they want to enter and try to eat. Once the belly is full, they return. See, these swallows leap and dive and float. dive and float. So they search for their food into the water, they dive into the water, get their food, eat it, and sometimes float on the water. See, on one side, crows are searching their food in the different parts of the surface of the earth, whereas on the contrary, the swallows go into the water to search their food. So, in the water and on the land, the poet is able to observe the routine activities of these birds and gets impressed with the kind of activities that these birds do. See, if crows go leisurely to work and return home late in the evening to their nests, on the contrary, the swallows leap, dive, and float. As I made a reference, of course, the poet is not mentioning that the swallows went into a lake. No, he doesn't make any reference to a lake or a tank. Rather, he gives phraseology which gives us an impression that the poet must have observed the swallows on water surface. Wherever they are able to find some small fishes, they might enter into water, diving into the water, must have been able to catch some fish, eat it, and again when they come out from the deeper part of water on the surface, they simply float. Floating on the water is a most beautiful experience. Those students who have the experience of swimming, at least I used to swim when I was a child, up to 10th standard. We have a beautiful lake in my village wherein we used to swim for hours together. We used to float in the water, look at the sun, never sink because we knew the skills of swimming. Lovely experience. Of course, such experiences must be gone through by you. Unless you go through such activities, such processes, you may not be able to understand the kind of description that I am giving you. Okay. Now he has made a reference to crows, swallows. Now he comes to another set of bird called cuckoo, and cuckoo sound his cheerful note. Oh, how blessed I am! See, nightingale is a most famous bird in India. Nightingale is a bird just like a crow. It is not that beautiful to look at. It is dark. Of course, let us not debate that one is beautiful or not on the basis of uh, the color, as there is no need because in the international level, just for making a reference to colors on advertisements, many hues and cries are taking place. Therefore, uh, the poet is trying to make us know that he is in a perfect condition. The poet in a the poet is in a blessed place, most lovely place, surrounded by lovely things. They are all interested to give the poet that joy, that exuberance. See what he says? There is a cuckoo. It's a sound. The moment he listens to the sound, the song of cuckoo, how does the poet feel? It's lovely songs, the notes are very, very happy notes, cheerful, not melancholic, very happy, cheerful, joyous. What else he needs? He has got a most cozy, conducive atmosphere where he can lead his life happily. Therefore, he is living in the world of cuckoos, he is living in the world of crows, he is living in the world of swallows, and not only the cuckoo, the bird, very typical bird in England, which goes into the air or which leaves the home early in the morning, and the whole day it goes and gathers its food and returns home only late in the evening. Cuckoo. If you look at the lovely poems written by Mr. Wordsworth, the famous romantic poet of English literature, you will see how happy he is to be in the blessed company of cuckoos. Lovely bird. He has written many poems on the lives of these birds living in nature. And cuckoo sound his cheerful note, where skylark now in cloud do rave. Ah. It is not only the cuckoo, even skylark, an equivalent to Indian nightingale in Europe. See, even skylark now in clouds do rave. Ah. Even the skylark, which is talking enthusiastically with happiness in the air. Ah. So, the basic argument of the poet is that I am not in the company of human beings right now. Therefore, I am happy. Number one. I am not in the company of human beings, but I am in the company of birds. Therefore, I am happy. The birds like crows, skylarks, cuckoo, swallows. He is giving us a catalog of the birds. It is so picturesque, and we feel as if the poet is really leading a blessed life when he is in company of all these birds. The poet is very happy to express his happiness. Therefore, he says that the, 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 the skylark, which is found in the clouds, which is found in the clouds, uh, it is also talking with great enthusiasm. Therefore, the poet says, "Oh, what a life is this I lead, far from the hum of human greed, where crows like merchants dressed in black, where swallows leap and dive and float, and cuckoos sound his cheerful note, where skylarks now in clouds do rave, half mad with fret." Uh, See, these skylarks, which are there in the sky, are bit, should I say, half mad, anxious, full of anxiety. They are in a state of anxiety, half mad with fret. Their souls have by hundreds for more joyous notes. They are majority in number. They are more in number. So these more number of birds, when they congregate, when they come together, they are so immensely happy. They suddenly burst into expressing through their body language what kind of happiness they are undergoing. See, where skylarks now in clouds do rave, half mad with fright that their souls have. See, the poet is even making a reference to the souls of these birds. Don't get the impression that the souls are only there with human beings. No. Wherever happiness lives, remember, after all, soul is nothing but, should I say, a smile, a happiness, a joy, a laughter is symbolically speaking the soul. Soul is something which you may not be able to see in your body as an organ physiologically, but soul is something which makes human beings to smile. Even it is said that a smile of a child is nothing but the presence of a soul. So also, if your smile, if your laughter is free from all negative vibrations, it is nothing but it is a soul. That's what the poet is trying to drive home in this context. By hundreds for more joyous notes. So the poet can listen to several number of should I say, the